Hello everyone, my name is Carolina and I'm representing Arkbound Foundation, a charity working to widen access to literature and improve diversity within publishing. Today we have with us Anne-Kathrin Schwab and Rebeca Roysen, who have written a chapter together for the upcoming Arkbound book, Climate Adaptation, coming out this 25th of October. Anne-Kathrin Schwab is a sociologist and she researches in the field of ecological and sustainable lifestyles. She's currently living in an eco-village with her son and working as a research assistant at the University of Vechta in the Department of Economy of Sustainability. She also supports the Global Ecovillage Network and ECOLISE in different projects. Rebeca Roysen holds a PhD in Sustainable Development and is a postdoc researcher at the University of Basil in Switzerland. She is also a member of an ecovillage at the Instituto Biorregional do Cerrado since 2016. Welcome, Anne and Rebeca. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction.
Yeah, thank you.
I would like to start the interview by asking you about your personal journeys that led to your current work with ecovillages and to writing this chapter for the book.
Who should start?
And you start.
Okay. Well, we are working together within the GEN research group in GEN International for the last 1.5 years, or maybe even more, I don't know. And we were organizing the GEN research colloquium. And then the request came from Arkbound whether GEN research could contribute to that book. And we were like, yes, we could contribute something. So out of our experiences of our PhDs that we both wrote, out of our experience of our experiences in ecovillages that we lived in, we were about, okay, let's compare that and write something together and contribute to that project. Oh.
Do you have anything to add, Rebeca? Or does that sum it up very well?
Yeah, that sums it up very well.
Okay. Another question that I have is, what do you think sets ecovillages apart from other types of transition initiatives and makes them kind of special in their own way?
Yeah, I can go for this one. For me, ecovillages are unique in the sense that they integrate practices in many dimensions of life. So since construction of the houses, to energy generation, to collective property and collective decision making, so to inner transformation. So all of the aspects of life are brought into discussion and redesigned intentionally. So that's what is unique about ecovillages.
Mm-hmm. And I can add that, like, they are intentional communities, which means that a bunch of people meet and plan and buy a certain location, for instance, a castle or a settlement or an area where they really transform everything and build it up on their own manner. In Germany, there's, for instance, Schloss Tonnendorf or Tempelhof, which was an old castle. Now it's inhabited by an intentional community. They define everything by their own. So they have a constitution of their association and they have a specific aim and a specific intention. Whereas, for instance, transition initiatives, they are people from one town or one quarter of a town or one village, and they come together and say, okay, let's do certain things together, like an urban, like a gardening project, or let's do some things to combat climate change. And it's more open, the people can come and go, and it's not like this closed entity of an intention where they really commit to that project. I think this is the biggest difference we see, I think. Yeah.
So one of the things that you mentioned early on in your chapters are that these ecovillages tend to be put in rural areas that face certain challenges that are associated with them. So in your two different contexts of Germany and Brazil, what are the main challenges in the rural areas? And are they very similar or very different? What did you see?
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, challenges in rural areas are very different in the two countries. And I think that for Brazil, even though Brazil is no longer an official colony, in Brazil we still have a lot of colonial practices, institutions, and mentality. So we are still in the process of destroying our forests, our biodiversity, our waters, attacking our indigenous peoples in order to open land for big landowners to produce soybeans and cattle for exportation. So it's the same logic. And it's important to notice that Brazil has a very unequal distribution of land. So less than 1% of rural properties, they own 45% of rural areas in Brazil. So it's very unequal. And this inequality, I think, is the biggest difference between the two countries.
Mm-hmm.
And also these big landowners, we call them ruralists. They are very politically influenced, so they use this influence to keep things as they are and prevent a transition. And now, especially in the past few years, with the election of Bolsonaro, which is a big ally of ruralists, we can see that a dismantling of environmental laws, a rise in violence in rural areas, especially attacks against indigenous peoples. We have released in the past few years, I think we're already in the mark of 500, maybe 450 new agrochemicals for release to be used. Many of them are banned in other countries. So the situation in Brazil is really critical, and I believe that the colonial history of our country really shapes this situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and coming to Germany, this is of course in totally different circumstances. So this is one of the most westernized countries in the world. It's very, very small compared to Brazil. That's the first thing. And due to industrialization and other aspects, we have kind of like people are leaving the countryside. People are leaving the rural areas and they tend to move to cities. So we have a big challenge with demographic change in rural areas. And of course, we have challenges with the infrastructure of rural areas. So, for instance, public transport is not very well organized. The schools are closing since there are not enough children anymore living in the villages, and the families are all tend to move to cities and tend to bring children to other opportunities for education. So there are very distinct challenges, and beside that, even especially in Eastern Germany or in structural weak areas, there are more like on the political framework, people are tending more to be right-wing oriented. So there's in rural areas, people tend to be more conservative and a little bit, I cannot say that for every area, but the challenges like that, especially reaching the demography in the rural areas is sometimes challenging in Germany. It's very distinct in every part of Germany again. So you can't say in Eastern Germany it's different challenges than in Western Germany, or in the south of Germany it's different than in the north. So each part is very distinctive and has different challenges. Yeah, this is also important. But of course, compared to Brazil, we are not a colonized country, more the other way around maybe. And we're kind of like also cause and effect of colonized countries. What happens in Brazil? This is also an important point, I think, that Germany has to think about.
Okay, so two countries with very different contexts. And then in the chapter, you go into two case studies, one in each country. So a German eco-village, apologies for my pronunciation, named Lebensgarten Steierberg, and a Brazilian eco-village, Instituto Biorregional do Cerrado, or IBC. So this question is for Anne about Lebensgarten in Germany. So it seems that at first, the eco-village was not very well received by the community around them. Did that change over time? What happened with the
Mhm.
local community?
Yeah, actually it changed a lot. So in the beginning, when the eco-villages were settling there, it is actually a specific area a little bit outside the village. And you can imagine like there were a lot of strangers coming into a conservative place, a conservative village, traditional village, and they were seen as a strangers or even as a sect or a cult. So they had such a different culture that they were really kind of suspicious for the people living there. And they had like other clothings, and they had other rituals. They didn't go to church, they practiced other spiritual directions, and they were like seen very critical, and even they were sent sect, a cult administration, whether they are sect or not, for many years. And but it changed during the last 20-30 years a lot, since they participated more in local politics. The village people saw what they contributed in a positive way, how they contributed to structural change, how they built up a kindergarten, they built up an alternative school. They had a lot of climate project, like the first solar panel station for e-mobility cars. And so they had a lot of positive effects for them. And also they had a seminar company where many people all over the world were traveling. And actually Lebensgarten is one of the founders of GEN, of the Global Eco-Village Network. So they were really progressive and really famous, like one of the first eco-villages after Findhorn in Scotland at all, in Europe. So Steierberg enjoyed a lot of fame for the eco-village. And like during the last 20-30 years, they became more and more, like they adapted more and more towards each other. So there are many positive effects happening over there.
Okay, good to know. So this next question is for you, Rebecca. So the story of IBC was a bit different because the area where it's located was already famous for ecological alternatives and emphasis in these areas. So what would you say that the eco-village brought to the area, even that in that sense?
Yeah. For me, when I was looking for an eco-village to live, I chose IBC because since its foundation, it had the intention of having a bioregional actuation. So IBC in Alto Paraíso, where it's located, it networks with other grassroots organizations and networks and local communities, traditional communities. And through these networks, they actively participate in local politics. IBC participates in local councils, policy councils, and they really support each other in this network. So I think that IBC brings one more organization to help this network to, because what they are doing is, if they can't really stop, what they are doing, we are doing, is trying to make it more difficult for ruralists and big companies to do as they please. So what we're doing is trying to, stop and defend, preserve the Cerrado, which is the biome there, which is really threatened, and to preserve our waters and to support agroecology and all of that. And it's actually trying to resist. So IBC, what it's doing is helping these networks to resist these big interests, vested interests in the region. And all these people, they do it with very little resources, and all of them do it out of love for the Cerrado. So it's really beautiful to see this fight to defend the region, and yeah, I feel very honored to be a part of it. It's really nice, it's really beautiful.
Okay, it's great to hear from both of you on these really positive stories. So one other thing that I would like to ask you is if you could share some of the most interesting innovations and adaptations that you have seen in these eco-villages.
Mm-hmm. I can start if you like. So in Lebensgarten, I think what is really progressive is the e-mobility sharing they have since 1990. So really pioneers in this regard. And they had one of the first e-mobility solar panel station, which means the electricity comes from the roof to the cars. And this is still pretty innovative, and they have it for 30 years already. So they started it in the 80s or late 80s doing that, and they are moving on with that until now. And now they have not only cars, they have a lot of like carrying bikes, electricity bikes, and they like have really a mobility hub where they can also the people from the village participate, and they have a solar panel station for electric cars also established in the village itself. So they are really like working together in this regard with the village very much. And the second really progressive area is the permaculture field, which is established by Declan Kennedy, who's also a founder of GEN and a professor there. And this is a really exploratory place, and they just turned it into community-based agriculture, with which they like nutrition the area with permaculture fruits and vegetables, and they have like regional seasonal vegetable all over the year for the village and around. So I think these are the most progressive things. And beside that, they established this free school, this alternative school there, where also a lot of children from all over come there, move there, and turn the demographic change totally around. And the first kindergarten that they also established for the people of the village and around. So I think there are many, many other things they can show. So these are just the biggest ones. Yeah.
How about you, Rebecca? Would you like to share some of the innovations and alternatives in IBC?
Yeah. Can you hear me well? My internet connection is not very good. Yeah?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. For me, when I think about ecovillages in general, I think one of the greatest innovation is a very simple one, which are the sharing sessions. Is to be able to get in a circle and I don't know, being able to talk from the heart and share the difficulties and drop all social masks and just be who you are and feel accepted for it. And I think that that's really great, and it has really helped me to learn more about myself and what I want to do and the things I love. And I think that's a great innovation. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm going to use that one to lead into a question that I wanted to ask. So you have both lived or are living in eco-villages. So you notice an effect in the well-being and the happiness of the individuals that are living in them?
I think it's both. Like for at least for my side, it's both. I think I really love living in eco-villages. I used to live there several years with my son, and I'm moving to one again now because I don't want to miss that feeling anymore of community and connectedness. And I think this is like really nice being involved in such a community and having all these positive effects. And on the other hand, like this is also the big challenge. Like you're really close to a lot of people who have different ideas or certain ideas and sometimes different opinion, who have problems and challenges within their own life and within the world. And of course, there are sometimes conflicts with each other. And I think you have to have a strong character. And they told me when I lived there, like you also have to be able like to separate a little bit and go a little bit back and don't take it too serious everything. And this is sometimes really challenging, I think. So, and in my PhD, I explained it like a fire, which is warm and very necessary for nutrition. And even especially in winter, you need this fire to be warm and cozy. But it's also like really dangerous. It can burn yourself, and it can also cause burnout. And this is maybe a good like picture for how I experience at least community life. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to live without that fire anymore. You just have to be careful with it, I think. So it's important being aware that there are always both sides.
Yeah, I think that this point that Anne brought, that you have the support from your community, I think that really helps in our mental health, because we know we're not alone. If we need to talk to someone, you always find someone who are willing to listen, and so that's really a really positive aspect. And of course, the possibility to be connected to a territory and to be connected to nature, that also really helps, not only mental health, but also physical health, because we eat more organic food, we have a healthier lifestyle. But like Anne said, about the conflicts, I think it's important for us not to make, like, we sometimes idealize too much, and people think that in eco villages we are always like singing around the fire and, you know, collaborating all the time. And it's not like that. And there are a lot of difficulties, and especially in IBC, my eco village, we still have a lot of, our infrastructure is really precarious, and we have a lot of financial issues as well. So it is not an easy life. But for sure, if we are still there, and it's because we think it's much better than going back to the dominant system. And we have this sport, and we have nature, and that really makes it up and makes us happy.
Thank you for sharing this in such a realistic, down-to-earth way. I think it's really important to really get a view from people who are living in there, and really can give you the really good and bad. They exist everywhere. So I also would like to ask you about the subject of culture, which you highlight in the chapter. It seems like eco-villages have quite a different culture outside of the mainstream. So how do you think that it has an impact on the cultures around the eco-villages for the local populations?
Yeah, definitely, I would say. So as we explained already, like, they are most times well-educated people, have been traveling a lot, are open-minded, have seen a lot, and they are like really want to change something in the world. That's why they change their entire lifestyle, and they want to show that they can live differently, and that there's a possibility to do it. So that's I think the most important thing. That's a showcase. So eco-villages show it's possible to live in a more sustainable manner, and this is already a political impact in the rural areas, I would say. And it's more than like a demonstration on the street. It's not a one day happening event. It's they're doing it their entire life. And what I heard, for instance, when they participate in local councils and with local authorities, they even start this sharing, what Rebecca mentioned. So they create another way of communication with each other. They say, okay, let's start with a sharing round. And how do you feel today? What are your troubles? So there's a holistic picture of the people, and this is what they bring into their where they are, because they are human beings, and they create a new system wherever they participate and bring it with them. And this is, I think, maybe the most important thing, that they bring another kind of culture to the places they live, and they engage themselves. Yeah.
This is a very important aspect, because when you think of society as a whole, we have already all the technology and all the resources to make a transition to a more sustainable and just society. We have everything. We have the knowledge, we have the technology. What we're missing is a cultural change, a change in lifestyles, in social practices, in worldviews. And this is why it's so important to have initiatives who are leading this cultural change and can be an inspiration and motivate people to do it. And I can see in the courses we give in IBC, students come and they get really inspired. So I think that's the most important influence or impact of eco-villages, because technologies can be developed in many places, and but this cultural change is something that is being led by community initiatives and grassroots innovations. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they also integrate a lot of habits and rituals from indigenous people in various forms, and it's a very nature, like close to nature culture. which is like maybe the most important aspects to like the idea of feeling the nature, feeling the earth, and feeling when it's hurt. This is maybe the cultural change they are already practicing at the moment, and they also want to bring into the world.
Yeah, and it's a good thing because yeah, we do have a lot of indigenous peoples and traditional communities who have been living sustainably for hundreds of years, and ecovillages, they look for inspiration there, and ecovillages is a solution for is an alternative for people, for westernized people who have lost their connection to their territories, their ancestors, and then they want to reconnect and they want to rebuild community. So they are like they're ever more building alliances and trying to learn from indigenous and traditional communities.
Yeah. This is, I think, really the most important aspect, that they are like kind of not inventing something new, but they're kind of trying to remember it and learn and see and adapt and see how others did it already. I think this is maybe that what they really do.
So in pulling all of these ideas together, how big of a role do you think that eco-villages will play in our future and in climate adaptation?
Yeah, I think that's what Anne said. They are like demonstrative projects. They showcase that, okay, it is possible to live a good life, a gratifying life with less resource use, with more collaboration and living simply. So for me, they have this power of example and education.
And it's an experimental field, right? So they experiment with a lot of different kinds of innovations, with technical innovations, with ecological innovations, with democracy innovations, like and social innovations. So they kind of experiment. And I think it's not maybe like it's as an example to be used for politicians and economy, like also the economic side of, like, for instance, solidary economy or common economy, like that they really try to find out how is life possible on earth for our species and move on with that. So they try to develop great ideas, and I think this is why actually research is so important in ecovillages, because we as a researcher or journalist or other people can make it more public what has been invented there, and try to see what is adaptable to other areas and other communities and other villages or whatever. So I think not everything is possible to transport, but I think the ideas are really great, and they differ a lot to each eco-village. And I think what also is an important aspect, that there's a worldwide connection of all eco-villages. So there's a, like with the global eco-village network, we are like, as one eco-village in Germany, we are connected to Brazil, to Australia. So when we launched the colloquiums, the research colloquiums, there were people like 50, 100 people from all over the world participating and listening to the ideas. And this is maybe also what makes the movement really great, that like there's a mutual exchange of all these pioneers, and they, like, all the ideas, they come from Australia to Brazil to Lisbon to wherever. And I think this is also something like a movement can really learn from. Yeah.
So staying in this topic of the future, what are your hopes for the future? So what do you hope that this book will achieve? And since it's related to the project, to the COP conference this November, do you have any specific hopes for the COP?
Yeah, for me, I think this book might bring more visibility to community-led initiatives for climate change. And I really hope they get more recognition and support. I think this is already happening in Europe, but at least here in Brazil, for example, ecovillages, they are still punished because they are not a legal form of land occupation. And I think it's important for them to get more visibility and be recognized as, together with other grassroots communities, to be recognized as important actors for sustainability transitions. And that governments could work with them, support them, and collaborate with them in order to find locally adapted solutions for transitions. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same point I would say. I think like it's important that this book shows some bottom-up initiatives and what they already elaborated and what they already brought. I from my side hope that it's a mutual learning process, so then that advocacy by big economic firms, enterprises, and I think it's important that all these other like associations or initiatives have a voice and are able to speak up and bring in what they have developed. And I think there are really great ideas coming around. And yeah, and the future for the eco-village movement, I would say, like, it's great when like people are like, it's easier for them to have an old legal form. It's not there in Germany as well, but they use the existing legal forms like associations or cooperatives, and they kind of tinker them together. And I think to be aware that like there also has to be a change in the way of hierarchy, how associations are formed, and that it's more open and being more egalitarian and more able to also transform and being in the process develop like more open forms, legal forms, in order to establish initiatives. I think this could be really great, and having also financial and support by how to do it. I think this is also good, like how to collaborate with local authorities or with politicians, and how to support each other with ideas and with other things that are necessary. I think this would be a great outcome.
So one final question. If people were to take just one message from your chapter, what would you like that message to be?
And do you want to start?
I can start. From my side, I would say like ecovillages are not only enclaves of dropouts that are like in the field of nowhere, but they really bring some transformation to the area they are settling. And they have a lot of positive intentions and effects to the world, and can change not only within their own little community, but also in a bigger sense. I think this would be my message I want to bring out. And you?
Yeah, for me as well. I think eco-villages and other grassroots initiatives, at least in Brazil, they are kind of marginalized in among some researchers, because they don't seem like they don't have the scale to have an impact. But actually, they are not necessarily isolated, and they can have a local impact, an important impact, and they can be seen as important actors in the regions. So I think that's the main message.
Okay, thank you so much, and Rebecca, for being here. It was great to talk to you about all these things related to eco-villages, sharing about your work and your experiences. For those who are watching, if you are now interested to learn more about what it is like that eco-villages can bring, and if you want to find out more specifically also about these two eco-villages that we've been mentioning, you can head to the description where you can find a link to the book Climate Adaptations. Even if you are interested, you can pre-order, it's already available. We have also mentioned during this interview several times the Global Eco-Village Network, and if you want to check that out, you can also find a link in the description of this video. Thank you again, Anne and Rebecca. It was wonderful to talk to you today.
Yeah, thank you too. That's
Thank
fun.
you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
See you soon. Bye.